good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. You're watching Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Joining me in the studio tonight, I have Anthony Loke. He is the Secretary General of DAP, also the incumbent MP for the Seremban Parliamentary Constituency, a seat he won in 2013 and is seeking to defend in GE15. Anthony, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you, especially during this very busy campaign period. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. If I may begin our conversation tonight by touching on the recent LRT fiasco, debacle, however you want to call it, service at 16 stations across that Ampang Park and Kelana Jaya line, all disrupted, you know, affecting hundreds and thousands of people who depend on this as a mode of transport. There's been a lot of anger directed at the caretaker transport minister, at Prasarana, at even the finance ministry. You, as former transport minister, where was the oversight? Where is the oversight? Where does it lie? I mean, the accountability, does it lie with the asset owner of LRT, Prasarana, or with the ministry, or with the finance ministry? How do you see it?
Well, first of all, of course, the minister in charge of transport have to be responsible for the breakdown of major public transportation system. And in this case, LRT is a major service disruption for the commuters in Klang Valley. Of course, at this point of time, I do not want to make any blame game, because I do not want to be accused of fishing for votes based on this incident. But I think what is important at this point of time is that it must be a leadership approach of tackling the problem. There is a problem, that there is a breakdown, and service will be disrupted, and as of now it will be 7 days. We do not know, probably it will be 7 days or beyond or more. So immediate action must be taken in terms of providing leadership, of tackling a whole of government approach, of ensuring that all agencies are involved in providing solutions to it.
Okay.
We know that LRT, the 16 stations cannot be operated. So immediately other mode of transport must be deployed in terms of buses, in terms of KTM commuters. They have to be increased in terms of services, in terms of frequencies, and even I would say, even you have to rob in the e-hailing services to ensure that services are provided to the public. Alternatives are being provided to the public. But this has yet to be seen in the past 24 hours. That even the caretaker Minister of Transport is still busy campaigning elsewhere, but has yet to come back to Klang Valley to provide some direction to this problem.
Well, you know, when you say leadership, that's quite interesting, because in moments of crisis, sometimes unexpected, sometimes avoidable, but leadership is important. And I do want to know where you see leadership coming into play. What is it that you know, commuters are looking for, that voters are looking for? Do you think that leadership might become, or the lack of leadership might become, an election issue? Again, transport is something that I'm surprised that, you know, we complain about it. It affects our daily life. We complain about it all the time, but yet I've yet to see it become a key election issue in G15.
Well, I just want to point out that leadership must be the value of a politician, of a leader. Whenever you have, you're facing with a crisis, first of all, you must acknowledge there is a problem. You must come out to face the public. I think that is the first requirement of any political leader. You must face the problem heads on. You'll be blamed, you'll be criticized, so be it. But you have to face the public, face the media. Ooh. That is the first lesson that I learned as a minister.
But facing the public, admitting there's a problem is, I would say, doubly as hard during an election season, when all you need is the voters' confidence, right?
Well, you have no choice, Melissa. I mean, as a minister, you have no choice but to face it. You cannot run away from your responsibility. You have to face it and immediately sit down, gather your whole team, look at what are the alternatives that you can do. That's leadership. So even though you'll be criticized, even though you'll be scolded, so be it. But most important is that you must provide a solution. You must provide a direction. You cannot leave it to the agency. You cannot just leave it to the CEO, because the CEO of Prasarana is only responsible for Prasarana. As I mentioned right now, if you want other agencies to come in, the CEO of Prasarana cannot direct KTM, for example, to do what they need to do. Okay? You can't direct the e-hailing companies to provide you alternative services. But as a minister, you can. As a minister, you can gather everyone together. And that's what I've always done when I was in the ministry.
Well, you talked a little bit about some of the lessons that you learned as a minister, and I do want to ask you, given that that was, you know, in GE14 in 2018, and then as your time as a minister, and now you're leading DAP. It's a very different time. I do want to ask you how the approach has changed, how your approach has changed, how DAP's approach has changed in this election compared to 2018. And also, has the political consciousness of voters changed along with the way you've changed?
Yes, definitely. The consciousness of the people have changed because people want answer. People want explanation of decisions that you made.
Okay.
So even in terms of candidature, we have to explain why we make certain decision.
Right.
We have to explain, we have to justify. But at the end of the day, you make a decision. Whether that decision is popular or not, as a leader, we have to face it. And we have to take ownership of that decision. So that's what I've been trying to do in this whole election campaign.
That's an interesting thing you point to about the explanation of candidate selection. Did you foresee that some of your candidate selection, while praised by some, were criticized by others? Did you foresee that that backlash was going to happen? Do you feel that you've done enough to communicate and, as you say, explain your decision?
Well, of course, there are always room for improvement. Okay, there are always things that we can further improve. But I've tried, I've tried to make explanation. I've tried to engage the media. So I do not turn down any media interviews or in any media requests
well, thank you for that.
for explanation. So my approach is that I would like to take the issues heads on, so that at least I explain myself. At the end of the day, whether my explanation will be accepted by the public or not, that is entirely up to the public. But at least I've given my take and my explanation.
Can we stay on the topic of of candidate selection and where you fielded them? And I think it's quite interesting because DAP this time around has fielded more Malay candidates than ever. So last year was 1 Malay candidate in Raub, and this year 9 Malay candidates. Young Shafura, Sharlina Rashid in Penang, and Sharizan Johan in Bangi. Some of these seats are DAP strongholds, and for me it speaks to a commitment of DAP to a multiracial party. How much, Anthony, has your leadership allowed for this to happen now as compared to previously in DAP, that you are committed to a multiracial party that you are now leading?
But to be fair to my predecessors, the party has always advocated a multiracial lineup.
But
in terms of
to put your money where your mouth is another matter.
Yes, because there are limitations in previous election. For example, we contested only 47 parliamentary seats last round. This round, we are contesting 55 parliamentary seats. And there are seats that, the incumbents are giving way. For example, in Bangi, Ong Kian Ming has openly said that he do not want to contest this round. So, in a way, there is a vacancy there. And, the incumbent is supporting the newcomer. His successor in that constituency. So we do not have any obstacles of fielding Sharizan Johan in Bangi, for example, because that preparation has been done for months.
That's a very unusual political culture in Malaysian politics.
Yes.
The stepping away as an incumbent, the grooming of a successor, all transparently done. Is this something that DAP is encouraging? How do we get Malaysia's political culture to be to change in this direction, particularly as in UMNO we've heard comments where older male incumbents refusing to make way for younger female candidates?
I think this is something that we need to bring about a new culture in political party. As far as DAP is concerned, I hope that I can lead DAP into this culture, so that in terms of renewal, in terms of rejuvenation, in terms of candidates, there will be more fresh faces every election. To interrupt,
but is this something that you are putting out from the top, or is this coming from incumbents themselves?
No, I'm putting up from the top. Of course, there are cooperation from the incumbents. There are incumbents such as Ong Kian Ming and Tony Pua, who are giving a lot of cooperation and support for this kind of renewal.
On the note of a multiracial party, DAP has said that it has a long-term plan to court rural Malay voters in general, but more rural. How is DAP planning to do that? What is the the game plan to gain the support of Malays? And I mean, walk me through the thinking of that.
First of all, I mean, the approach that we are contesting in some of the Malay majority seats is a beginning.
Okay.
So we know that probably in some of those seats, we will not be able to make it at the first round. Okay, we have actually factored that in. But I've made it very clear that win or lose, we have to continue to serve that constituency, because nothing can constitute hard work on the ground.
It begins somewhere, right?
Yes, it has to begin somewhere, and by contesting in that area is a start. Of course, we hope that we can win in those seats. You never know, because in election there are a lot of dynamics, a lot of factors, national factors, and so forth. So that you will never know. If, of course, if we win those constituencies, it's a bonus for us. But even if we do not make it this round, we have to contest those seats. For example, in Kedah, we are being attacked. There are component parties who say that DAP should not contest in Kedah for parliamentary seat. But we insisted that because we said that DAP as a multiracial party, what's wrong of us contesting in a state like Kedah? So there must be somewhere. There must be a beginning somewhere.
Okay, a couple of things that you've mentioned that are interesting. The first thing I do want to ask you is this long-term plan to court Malay votes. How does that play into your harmonious relationship with coalition partners like Amanah, who are also going for the same vote base?
Well, we have to convince our partners that we are here to complement each other. We are not competing against each other. The problem that faced by Amanah and PKR is that they have always been attacked by our rivals of working together with the DAP. DAP is an anti-Malay party, anti-Islam party. So I convinced them by telling them, by letting the DAP becoming more multiracial, it's actually helping them in the long term. Because we are in a coalition. We are complementing each other. We are not competing against each other. So if DAP wins an extra seat, it's actually to the benefit of the coalition.
And has that been well received?
Well, as far as the top leadership is concerned, we have a consensus on that. Of course, there are unhappiness on the ground, because that's just normal.
Again, yes,
yeah,
it doesn't trickle down to the grassroots,
because,
right?
For example, that person who are supposed to be fielded in that constituency, suddenly another party got that seat. Of course, he will not be fielded. Of course, there will be unhappiness. But that's leadership all about, right? We have to make certain decisions, which of course sometimes not popular on the ground, but the top leadership have to face it.
You mentioned the word attacked a couple of times in our conversation, and you know, DAP, no secret, has been often branded as the party that wants to diminish, you know, power and influence of Bumiputras in the community. It's painted as the political bogeyman, you know, for the Malays. You've denied that repeatedly, but I do want to ask you, how do you go about under your leadership? You became Sec-Gen in March. What is needed to break that misconception that DAP is the bogeyman for Malays?
Well, we have to just prove it by our actions.
Prove it.
Yeah, prove it by our actions that if we have the opportunity to serve in the government, or we are given a mandate to be part of the government, we have to prove by our actions and by our policies and by what we do in the government. I know that this issue of being the bogeyman of UMNO and PAS, you know, punching back for both these parties and Bersatu, will not go away. They are continuously attacking us on that. This just shows that their lack of political capital. So they have to use the DAP to secure the Malay base. But we have to be consistently aware that in order for us to win over a majority of Malaysians, we just have to remain steadfast in our approach, being moderate, being multiracial, and stay true to our cause.
Are you seeing a lot of that in the campaigning period, a lot of negative campaigning, racial politics coming to play?
Definitely. You look at what happened in Aitam. On first day, on nomination day, our candidate has been attacked, personal attack, very, very negative wordings coming out from the other side. But we just have to face it. So, but you can't fight those narrative with an equally negative narrative. If you fight that, you know, fire with fire, it will never end.
So I hear you when you say prove it through action. But if you put yourself in the shoes of a voter, particularly a Malay voter, who is getting this, you know, strong propaganda, strong narrative from other parties, Malay ethnocentric parties, how do you think voters will be voting along racial lines in GE15? Are voters ready to break through that and vote according to party ideology or party policy lines?
Melissa, I think as far as I'm concerned, I believe in proving it by our track record. I'm standing in Seremban, a 53% Malay constituency.
53%?
Yes, 53%. Okay, in a 5-corner fight. Okay, I have another 3 candidates, Malay candidates against me. One from GTA, one from Perikatan National, and the other one is an independent.
Yes.
Of course, I also faced with a BN candidate. But I am steadfast in contesting in Seremban because I believe that my track record and what I've done for the constituency to win over the support of the Malay community can be proven in the ballot box. So I am hoping that this election, we can show one point, that voters can actually accept someone who are not from their racial background if you have given your best in serving the public, in serving the constituency. So I am actually campaigning based on that track record in Seremban.
We talk a lot about Malay voters and the propensity to vote along racial lines, but it's also true of Chinese voters. So, and I do want to point to the recent state elections in which Chinese voter sentiment had shifted either towards indifference or against parties that they voted for in GE14. Have you managed to address that shift? What are you doing to win back their confidence and bring them back into the fold, let's just say?
Well, I think in Malacca and Johor, of course, there are some drop in terms of Chinese support, especially those who did not turn out. So we look at the entire scenario is that it's not that they are going back to the Barisan Nasional, but they are just, fed up and
disaffected.
They refuse to come out to vote. So that disappointment is real.
Well,
so what
sorry,
we have
Anthony,
done,
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. You said fed up. What do you think is behind the word,
well,
the feeling of
because
fed
of Sheraton move, of some of the things happened in the 22 months, the collapse of the government, looking at elected representative who stood under Pakatan Harapan, jumping to the other side, that caused the disappointment. So a lot of people have no confidence in politicians. So when they do not have that confidence, they actually do not differentiate which party. They put across the board, all politicians are the same, they say. So, but what happened in the past few months have some semblance of hope to them, especially when we have approved the constitutional amendment in the parliament, in outlawing, in having this anti-hopping law. That is a major breakthrough that we have somehow given back some confidence to the public, to make sure that their vote will not be wasted. Their vote, must be respected by the MPs. And secondly, of course, the decision of the court in jailing the former Prime Minister Najib Tun Razak is again re-emphasized that is a result of what happened in the last election.
Okay. So on that note, on the note of rebuilding the confidence that was once lost, that's been lost, confidence in the political system, it all boils down to accepting this new, more mature democracy of cooperation and coalition government, right? So there's a lot of discussion about, no one coalition is likely to have majority in this, in the results of this election. So there will be the need to cooperate, to build a coalition government. What would you say are DAP's deal breakers when it comes to cooperation in politics?
Well, at this point of time, our focus is to win 112 seats as a simple majority. We must cross the finishing line.
I understand.
So that focus is actually among us right now. So we campaign as a coalition in Pakatan Harapan. We have a common manifesto. So of course, our decision and our commitment is very simple. The moment we have a simple majority, we will support Anwar Ibrahim as the Prime Minister. So that focus remains as of now. So if other kind of situation arises, then we have to deal with it then, not now.
Well, the reason I ask is because it will give tremendous confidence to voters to know DAP's thinking beyond the campaign period, beyond the polling, the polling booth. What is the thinking of DAP in terms of cooperation? Also because You were one of the early supporters of the MOU, the CSA.
Yeah.
What has that experience taught you about cooperation and bipartisanship in government, in the current Malaysian political landscape?
Yes, I am a strong advocate for bipartisanship. I believe that cooperation across parties are important for the betterment of the country. But we must have some baseline. There are certain parameters, certain criteria that we must put forth. For example, rule of law. That is a basic principle. That cannot be compromised. Okay. In terms of multiracialism, in terms of respecting the differences among our communities, that must be respected. I think key of all these criteria are, of course, rule of law, and also we want a credible and a trustworthy government.
Rule of law, I'm reading between the lines here, Anthony. When you say rule of law, are you talking about non-negotiable working with court clusters or people with ongoing court cases, or respecting whoever has been convicted and serving that conviction?
Well, that principle, of course, is important. I think it's very important to convince the public that, everything must go by the law. That principle of respecting the Constitution, the constitutional process and the legal process must be respected.
Right. You also talked a little bit about campaigning or rallying around the Pakatan Harapan manifesto. And I know you had a say in this manifesto. Why do you think that this is the manifesto that will appeal to voters when, if you were to compare to Barisan Nasional or Perikatan Nasional, those manifestos felt much more like mini budgets? There were a lot more initiatives and handouts that were announced, as opposed to large-scale reform, which was the basis of the PH manifesto.
Yes, I think manifestos is important, but what is more important is the leadership, the leaders who will implement the manifesto. I think among all the prime ministerial candidates, Anwar Ibrahim stood out among the three coalitions right now. I think our message to the public right now is that those on the other side have been tested as a prime minister, and I think the hashtag of PM Gagal, Kerajaan Gagal applied to both of them. But Anwar Ibrahim has never been a prime minister. So let him prove himself. Our message to the Malaysian public is that give Anwar a chance to prove himself.
How are you going to ensure that this manifesto is not just going to be rhetorical, it's not just going to be lip service? Again, voters remember the debacle of the GE40 manifesto.
Well, I think lessons learned. We have to respect the manifesto. Whatever has been committed in a manifesto, the government must try our level best to implement it. Because at the end of the day, if you do not respect that manifesto, the people will not trust you anymore.
Thank you so much for speaking with me. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Anthony Loke, Secretary General of DAP and incumbent for the Seremban parliamentary constituency, a seat he is seeking to defend in GE15. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melissa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.